The Northern Rail crisis is intolerable, appallingly stressful and economically damaging. Every single day, as mayor of Greater Manchester, I am inundated on social media with stories of commuters struggling to get to work or businesses battling to cope with the North's ongoing railway crisis. People like the 19-year-old apprentice who has decided the only way to get to work on time is to walk 3.5 miles or pay for a taxi. Or the parent having to make frantic phone calls to organize short-notice childcare when their train is cancelled at the last minute. Or the call center manager worried about the mental health of her staff. I've also been told of workers on final warnings from their bosses because of repeated lateness, something they are completely powerless to control. The situation is intolerable, appallingly stressful and economically damaging, and it's due to the dire train service being delivered by Northern. Theresa May told to get a grip of rail crisis as local papers unite for action. Greater Manchester is supposed to be at the heart of the government's so-called Northern powerhouse, but the Northern rail crisis is holding us back. As Transport for the North has said, the patience of residents, businesses and visitors has been tested. People desperately need a service they can rely on. After weeks of being asleep at the wheel, the Transport Secretary stood up in the House of Commons this week to address the crisis. The problem was he talked of recent difficulties, but as anyone who regularly travels across the North knows, this is nothing new. Greater Manchester is one of the few remaining places in the country that has to put up with diesel pacer trains, essentially a bus frame on wheels. These trains were built with a maximum lifespan of 20 years but yet still rattle across the North nearly 40 years later. Every day many are short-formed, which means they have too few carriages, and are swelteringly hot, smelly and overcrowded. And very often late. We keep being promised that things will get better, but for many people and in the North it's only getting worse. We are having to endure a new emergency train timetable featuring fewer trains than last week. This is Northern's latest attempt to deliver something resembling a decent service. It's an unacceptable situation, and if things do not improve within the 2 months of this emergency timetable, then they should be stripped of their franchise. It's as simple as that. Compensation is the very least Northern can do. It is clear that there must be a substantial offer for those with advance or season tickets. More broadly, I believe there should be a temporary reduction in general ticket prices on all services and routes affected by the emergency timetable. Rail service from Northern Rail intolerable, says Andy Burnham. Mosque and Sikh temple set on fire and arson attacks on same night. Anyone can park on your drive and there's nothing you can do about it if Northern is unwilling to put forward an acceptable compensation and fare reduction package voluntarily, as called for by Transport for the North yesterday. Then I believe fines should be imposed to pay for it. Patience has run out, and Northern no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt. This week we've sent a clear message to the government that the North is no longer prepared to accept second best. This is not about playing politics, but about wanting to see this intolerable situation resolved as quickly as possible and minimizing economic damage to the region. This is about getting things right for passengers, whose lives have been turned upside down in recent weeks. As newspapers from across the North have said, we were promised a Northern powerhouse. It's time the government delivered it. More, Fed Up commuter creates Northern Fail app to highlight Northern Rail ineptness. More, Northern Rail removes 165 daily trains until end of July. More, Northern Rail boss apologizes for inappropriate Twitter replies.